So just the other day, I was sitting outside of my house, as I do, and I started to think about the upcoming MLS season, and I was like, F it, let's do another preview. And so here I am, ready to talk about the other half of the 23 teams that are now in MLS in the league's 23rd season of existence, since I already previewed the Eastern Conference yesterday, which you can check out here. I feel like it's gonna be in this corner, right here, a link. It's gonna pop up any second now, I can feel it, though it could be in this one. I'm not. It's one of these two. Also, it'll be in the description, so you can watch it after you're done watching this. Also, because I already broke down how the league works in yesterday's video, I'm gonna give you the Spark Notes version of that right now. So here we go. 23 teams in 2 conferences will play 34 games, 17 home and 17 away. The top 6 in each conference will make the playoffs, and the top 2 of those 6 in each conference will get a first round bye, while the teams that finish 3rd through 6th will battle it out in a 1-game playoff for the right to play the teams that finish 1st and 2nd. Then there will be a home and away series in the quarterfinals, and then again in the semifinals before a winner-take-all final known as MLS Cup, which will be hosted by the team that had the best record in the regular season. And are you writing this down? You should be. And that is just one trophy out of a possible 5 that an MLS team can win in a season. Also, Toronto FC are the reigning MLS Cup champions, just in case you're wondering because you live under a rock. The other trophies of the US Open Cup, or the Canada Championship as it's called up north, and the current title holders for those are Sporting Kansas City for the Open Cup and Toronto FC for the Canada Championship, which is how they qualified for the CONCACAF Champions League. And then there's the Supporters Shield, which is given to the team with the best record in the regular season, which was won by Toronto FC last year. So if you're doing the math at home, and I hope that you are with one of those tiny calculators, then you now know that Toronto won a domestic treble last season, which was very impressive. And then there's the CONCACAF Champions League, whose reigning champion is Pachuca, and then finally it's the FIFA Club World Cup, which was most recently won by Real Madrid. But enough of the overview. Let's get into the details of each team of the Western Conference, and we're going to start with the Portland Timbers, who finished first in the West last year but blew a 1-0 lead at home, where they never lose, to get beat by the Houston Dynamo 2-1 in the quarterfinals of the playoffs, which led surprisingly to their longtime manager Caleb Porter resigning from his position. Yeah, Jimmy, no one saw that coming, mainly because they were too busy making TIFO and making sure no newbies sat in the TA section. A TNA section? That's allowed there? No, TA as in the Timbers Army. The TNA's at Mary's after the game is over. Or so I've been told. I've actually never been there myself. I don't even know what Mary's is. Delightful insight as always, thank you. But now back to the team. I thought they made a great decision in hiring Gio Savarese as Caleb Porter's replacement, because not only does he speak multiple languages, which I believe commands immediate respect from all of the players in the locker room, because he can communicate with them in their native tongues, which I believe is an underappreciated skill. He also is a proven commodity after his year after year success and consistency with the NASL's New York Cosmos. So I'm happy that he's finally getting a crack at things in MLS, because I know he's going to do well. However, and I know you guys love my howevers, the Timbers' best players are all on the wrong side of 30, including last season's MVP of the league, Diego Valeri. So if any of them, but mainly Valeri, go down with any significant injuries, their season will probably go down too. But I love Gio, and I know his players are going to love him too, so I know they'll be running through walls for him by the end of the season, which means I'm going to say they're going to finish 3rd. And up next, let's head to Utah for the Royals of Salt Lake, who after a dismal start to the season last year, which led to the firing of Jeff Cassar and the hiring of everyone's favorite post-game interview Mike Pecky, they almost made the playoffs. They were only 1 point away, which is a credit to the new boss and his infectious enthusiasm. But now, with a full off-season under his belt, which included picking up a few new players like a Spanish forward and a Croatian playmaker and a Welsh right back, which is adding to his side's international field, which is already being led by Albert Rusnak and Jefferson Savarino, and I really feel like I butchered both of their names. And I'm sorry about that. And that's going along with their very talented homegrown players like Brooks Lennon, Justin Glad, and Danny Acosta, who all came out of RSL's much-lauded academy. I believe a lot of the pieces of the puzzle are now in place for the club to do some real damage in the league this season. So I'm going to say 4th. And now let's head to Carson, California and talk some Los Angeles Galaxy. Because the most successful team in MLS history decided to have one of their worst seasons ever last year, and it came at exactly the worst time, because there is a new team in LA, LAFC, who have a brand new stadium close to downtown LA and cooler colors, and a cooler logo, and cooler owners like Will Ferrell and Magic Johnson and Mia Hamm, which I believe has stolen almost all of the Galaxy's street cred. So it's imperative for them to show the city of Los Angeles that not only can they beat their new rivals, but that they're more enjoyable to watch too. So they're gonna need to be aesthetically pleasing because that's what's gonna keep people coming back. Then they should really just sign David Beckham again because he knows how to get people to come out to games, which from what I understand from my lady friends is by him taking his shirt off after the game is over. The people just love naked David Beckham. Well, then that's probably why they're in the running for Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I mean, he likes taking his shirt off too. Man, I like where your head is at. You're smart. No, you're smart. No, you're smart. You're smart. No, you're smart. No, you're smart. No, you're smart. You're smart. No, you're smart. No, you're smart. You are smart. Was that just on camera? That is so embarrassing. Kind of like the Galaxy last season. Well, speaking of the Galaxy, thankfully, they have nowhere else to go but up since they were the worst team in the West last season, which gave their old but new coach, Ziggy Schmid, who was in his second stint with the team, a chance to shed all of their dead weight and locker room cancers in the offseason and start anew. And I think he's done a great job so far, picking up some solid pieces like striker Ola Kamara from Columbus, who has been as consistent a scorer as anyone in the league the last few years, to go along with Romain Alessandrini, and I hope I said that right, and the Dos Santos brothers, and Sebastian Lletget, and Emma Boateng. And now that I say all of these names out loud, I really like their attacking players a lot. That is, if they can stay healthy. But their defense is still somewhat of an unknown quantity, so I believe they're gonna improve overall this season, but I'm just not sure by how much. So I'm gonna say 7th. And next up, we head to the Big D for FC Dallas, who easily won the award this past season for being the most disappointing club in 2017, because back in 2016, they won the Supporters' Shield and the US Open Cup, only to lose to the team that won MLS Cup that year, the Seattle Sounders, in the semifinals. I mean, they were 2 wins away from being the first treble winners in MLS history. So naturally, before the beginning of last season, they were an easy pick to win it all because they had the same core of guys and the benefit of the experience from the season before, both the good and the bad. And well, guess what? They sucked in 2017, especially in the second half of the season, where they won 2 out of their last 15 games and missed the playoffs entirely. And that deserves a big, giant, and huge no mommy's way. So in this offseason, you would think that a club that prides itself on developing players from its academy would restock the team, especially in defense where they need some help, with players from their academy. But what did they do, Jimmy? They bought a few players from Europe instead, which seems to go against everything that this club stands for. I know, right? I'm disappointed. But maybe that's because they're good at developing strikers and midfielders instead of center backs, like Kellen Acosta, Emerson Hyndman, and Weston McKennie, the latter 2 of which elected to play in Europe for Fulham and Schalke respectively, instead of signing for Dallas. Well, if that's the case, then I'll back off on my disappointment just a little bit. And I guess I should just back off in general because I really enjoy their attacking players with Maxi Urruti, Mauro Diaz, Michael Barrios, and new signing Santiago Mosquera, who I think will surprise some people with how good he really is. But it's their defense and the potential move of Kellen Acosta to Europe in the summer that makes me worried for them. However, they still have a lot of quality in their team, and I think that'll be enough for them to squeak into the playoffs. 6th. And now let's head to where commerce meets competition in Commerce City and talk shop about the Colorado Rapids. Hey, can I go first on this one? If you must. Okay, thanks. So they fired their club legend Pablo Mastroianni as coach, which I should mention is such a great trend in MLS, you know? Hiring former club legends as coach. I love it. Which means I'm ready when you're ready, Sporting Kansas City. Don't take my jokes. But it's not a joke, I mean it. I would love to coach the team. So anyway, they fired Pablo, who in fairness didn't have any coaching experience prior to getting this job. So all right, that's fine. I get it. But then they went out and hired someone named Anthony Hudson, who was most recently the coach of the New Zealand national team, the Kiwis, but who also has no top flight club coaching experience. None. 0. So maybe I don't get it. And then the new manager went out and signed 4 players from mid-level championship sides and 1 from the Scottish Premiership, which means Route 1 football so they can win the second ball in the opposing half and start the attack from there will be in full effect in the thin air this season. So enjoy that, everybody. Pitt Army, Rapids Army. The problem is though, I don't know who's gonna score for them consistently. And obviously you need to score to win games, so I'll let you say it. They're getting almost dead last, but not quite. 11th. And now let's head back to Texas and talk about the Houston Dynamo. So last season, this team crushed their opponents on the counterattack with Albert Ellis and Romel Kyoto killing it out on the wings and me probably killing their names. And Cubo Torres holding it down in the number 9 spot, which surprisingly led them to upsetting Sporting Kansas City and the Portland Timbers in the playoffs before they finally got a dose of reality in their loss to the Seattle Sounders in the semifinals. However, Torres got sold to Mexico this offseason, which means manager Wilmer Cabrera is putting all of his money on Mauro Manotas to be the guy in the number 9 spot this season, and I think he's going to do well. So Houston's attack is not my problem. It's their defense, because they're old. Like me old. And here are 2 of the names that are starting for them, but who should be collecting retirement checks instead, and they are DeMarcus Beasley and Philip Senderos. Now don't get me wrong, I love these old war horses, but it's a long season and they play in a city that feels like the center of the sun in the summer, so I'm not sure how they're going to hold up. Plus, Houston only won 1 game on the road all of last season, so actually I have 2 issues with them. Their old defense and their terrible road form. And you know what? Actually, make that 3 issues, because I think teams are going to be better prepared for them this season, and that's going to make it harder for them to have success, and then they're going to get all frustrated at each other and they might even implode. So I'm going to say simply that I'm sorry, because I think Houston is going to miss the playoffs. 10th. Also, fun fact for you, I picked Houston to get 10th last year, and look how they did. So don't at me, Dynamo fans. I'm doing you a favor, because this prediction is a good luck charm for your club. And now let's head back to the Pacific Northwest for the Vancouver Whitecaps. This team had the top spot in the Western Conference all wrapped up last season, but then they could only get 1 point out of their last 3 games and fell to 3rd on the last day of the season, which I think sums up this team a bit. That is, in terms of not stepping up consistently when they needed to the most. However, with the addition of Kai Kamara, who's going to replace the outgoing Freddie Montero, they finally have a big-bodied and athletic number 9 that should suit Carl Robinson's style a little bit better, which means they should again be dominant on set pieces this season, but in the off chance that they're not, it's going to put a lot of pressure on a defense that has changed a few names this offseason, and as a former defender, I know that defense wins championships. And yes, I'm a bit biased. So I'm not convinced yet that this team is as stout as it needs to be defensively to make a good run, so I'm going to say they'll finish 8th. Dude, that is a big drop off from the season before. Have some respect. Get off my back. The Western Conference is stacked this season, so I just have to accept the fact that 6 of the 12 teams in the West and their fans are going to be pissed at me after this preview. And were you just calling me smart like 17 million times a little earlier? So you have some respect. No. I know what you're doing here. You're just making sure you're leaving some space in the top 6 so that you can give a positive prediction about your 2 former clubs, Sporting Kansas City and the San Jose Earthquakes. Wait, what? No. They both made the playoffs last year, so it's not that big of a stretch to see them do it again. So you know what? Just for you, let's talk about my 2 former clubs, and we're going to start with where my name is etched on the wall of the stadium for all to see from right now until the end of time, and it's Sporting Kansas City. And I'll keep this one brief. I think they're going to go undefeated and win the league. First, I knew it! Okay, fine, sure. The club has lost in the first round of the playoffs for 4 consecutive years, which is a league record. But at least they're making the playoffs consistently and then losing a few days later and then watching the rest of the playoffs from their couch just like the rest of us. But still, though with the loss of 2 of their best players this offseason in Benny Feilhaber and Latif Blessing, and their best young player in Eric Palmer Brown, who signed with Manchester City in the January transfer window, and with no real standout striker in the number 9 spot, I'll admit I'm a little fearful for how this season is going to go. But Peter Vermes is one of the best coaches in the league for a reason, so I'm confident he's going to figure it out. Second, which means we're left with former club number 2 and the club I live closest to now, the San Jose Earthquakes. Who, okay, I get it. They needed a miracle in the dying minutes of the last game of the season to make the playoffs with a minus 21 goal difference, and that isn't good. But they hired a new manager from Europe to turn things around, though I've said before that's a bit dicey because this league is run so much different from pretty much every other league in the world, and that makes it hard at times for Europeans to adapt. But I've had the benefit of being around the club this preseason and meeting the man himself, and I really feel like he's up for the challenge, so 5th. You are so biased. It's like you're gonna do a new series with them or something. What the? Who told you? That hasn't been announced yet, so keep that on the DL, on the down low, you know? Until it's time. Yeah, sure, I can keep it on the down low. He's doing a new series with the San Jose Earthquakes where he and club legend Joe Cannon are gonna partner up to do crazy stuff. Yo, cut his mic. And up next, it's time to head to the freezing cold and talk about Minnesota United, who after getting 36 points in 34 games last season, made very few moves in the offseason. And of the moves they did make, like signing 35-year-old defender Tyrone Mears, and you might as well just sign me at that point, none of those signings were significant or even all that exciting unless he would have signed me, which makes me think that they're not going to spend on any big names until they open their new downtown stadium in 2019. So enjoy another year of mediocrity, Minnesota. Also, tell the people that run your temporary stadium to paint over the football lines. It looks terrible. 12th. And now it's time to chat about the other team in my hometown, LAFC. So not only did the newest club in MLS choose wisely with their first ever manager in Bob Bradley, who once led the expansion team, the Chicago Fire, to a historic double in 1998 by winning MLS Cup and the Open Cup, so he clearly knows how to have success right out of the gates. They also made some very smart signings by getting Mexican international Carlos Vela to leave La Liga and his club Real Sociedad to be a part of something new in the City of Angels. And they picked up some top quality in Laurent Simon, Benny Feilheimer, I never get that right, and Walker Zimmerman. So I think they're going to compete and be tough to break down, which are hallmarks of a Bob Bradley team. But they lack depth. So once and if and when someone in their first 11 gets tired or injured, it could be a very long season, but I guarantee it's going to be a fun one, and I look forward to watching them play. 9th. And finally, saving the best for last, it's the MLS Cup winners from 2 years ago and the MLS Cup finalists from last year, the Seattle Sounders, who have to be devastated after learning of striker Jordan Morris's ACL tear in the CONCACAF Champions League 2 weeks before the start of the season, because he is going to miss the whole year. But given the way this team has faced adversity in the last few years with their longtime coach Ziggy Schmidt getting fired and Clint Dempsey's health scare and watching their rivals the Portland Timbers win an MLS Cup before them, though I'm pretty sure they're still bitter about that, they always respond in a positive way, and I don't think this season will be much different. However, their core guys in the spine of their team, like Clint Dempsey, Ozzie Alonso, and Chad Marshall, who are 34, 32, and 33 respectively, are getting older. And when everyone is gunning for you at the top, it becomes harder to maintain that high level needed to have success unless these older guys know that this is probably their best and maybe last shot for one more trophy together as the most important players on the team before, like what always happens with older guys, the club decides to start turning over the responsibility to some up-and-coming and cheaper younger guys instead, which is what I think is going to happen after this season is over. So I guarantee you that these older guys know exactly what is going on, and I expect them to have killer seasons, which of course will be to Seattle's benefit first. So all right, that is it. That is all I got for the MLS Western Conference. And what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Also, and as I mentioned yesterday, we are doing a Warm Ballers MLS Fantasy League. So if you want to join in on the festivities, then the info is in the description below. Also ×2, and as a reminder, if you win this Warm Ballers MLS Fantasy League, I will fly to your house and have a pickup game for just you and your friends, unless of course you want to open it up to everybody in your area. And then after that, you can buy me some pizza and we can play some FIFA too. If you like to lose, because I'm really good. So good luck. Later.